Hi Jo, thank you for coming in today and to tell us a little bit about your experience. Perhaps you could start just by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, that's fine. I have two children, two boys. One's 12 now and the other one's 7. I'm married and I have a history of depression and anxiety.
Okay, thank you. And can you tell us a bit about having your first child?
Yeah, so my first child, I suffered with postnatal depression after having him. I have a heart condition as well, so throughout the pregnancy I was very closely monitored by hospitals up in London, and then just before I had my son, they wanted me to be admitted, so I was up there for 4 weeks on my own. My husband was able to come and see me as much as possible, but with work and things it wasn't sort of every day, and then at 36 weeks I was induced because they just didn't want me to go full term because of my heart problems, and everything was fine. I had a very successful pregnancy considering the possibilities of things that could have happened, and after he was born we were still in London for about a week, but that was just to monitor my heart problem after birth, and then we went home, and then he was about 6 weeks old and I realised that I was quite tearful. I felt like the worst thing in the world had happened, and I really couldn't understand why I felt like that, because he was a very much wanted baby. Everything had gone so well with the pregnancy and the birth. I just didn't understand why I felt like I did. I was extremely anxious, worried about the baby all the time. Any little thing, it was the worst case scenario. So I mentioned it to my health visitor, and at the time there was a group that they ran for mums with postnatal depression, so I started going to the group, and that group was a lifeline, just having somewhere to go every week with other mums talking about how we all felt, and we was all feeling the same. We'd swap stories and give each other advice of what worked for us and what didn't. So with that and medication, and I think I saw a counsellor as well, I gradually got better, and I actually ended up volunteering for that group for 3 years after I actually a patient there.
Well, that's lovely. Jo, if I can just ask you, with the medication and the counselling, was that your health visitor that had kind of put that in place?
It was the GP that done the medication, and I think because I'd suffered with depression before, I sort of recognised the signs, so I went to the GP and sort of told them what was going on, and I think they were the ones that put me in touch with the counselling as well through IAP services.
Yeah. And how long do you think it took for you to feel less anxious and to feel better within yourself?
Probably a couple of months, and it gradually got better. I think every first time mum is anxious to some degree, but yeah, probably a couple of months until I sort of didn't feel so down and sad. Yeah.
And then how about with your second son?
So with my second son, was slightly different. So the plan was exactly the same regarding the birth and because of my heart condition. However, he decided that at 24 weeks my waters broke. So I was taken up to London. It was touch and go whether he was going to come that day or not. Luckily everything calmed down and I was admitted up in London again. But obviously this time I had a 4-year-old at home, which was really difficult being away from them for that amount of time. And thankfully I was able to sort of hold on to him until I got to 28 weeks, and then he decided the day before his big brother's birthday that he would like to come out into the world. So he was born, and for the first week he was doing quite well. He was in the special care. We was up there again for a week, mainly to check that I was all right. And then when I was fit for discharge, he was well enough to go to our local hospital, so we went home. And we was there for about a week, and then he became really, really unwell. And so then he got transferred to Brighton Hospital, which is about an hour away, hour and a half away from where we lived. So I stayed in the Ronald McDonald House attached to the hospital, and my husband and son were still at home and going to school and work, and they'd come to Brighton at the weekends to stay as well. And it was just a roller coaster ride, that is special care. My son had to have 2 operations, and after 3 months he was well enough to come home. So he came home. He did have to go back into hospital 2 months later to have another operation, and then I went back to work, and at the time I worked as a paediatric nurse. So I went back to work, and then about 6 months after I'd been back at work, I had a breakdown at work and was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. I was having flashbacks, and I was convinced that he was going to die still, that every night I'd wake up and find him gone. And that it was really, really hard. So I gave up my career. I just couldn't be in that environment anymore. I went to my GP, I think I was still on medication anyway. So, but I had some PTSD, CBT through the IAP services, and it wasn't perinatal specific, but it helped. And that took probably 3 or 4 months, I think, to sort of get me better. It probably took me a lot longer to fully get better, and sometimes now I still have a bit of a wobble, especially if he's unwell at all, or if there's something going on that I think is a bit unsafe or something like that, then I still get a bit of a wobble, but it's nothing like it used to be.
No. And how are the boys now?
They are both absolutely fine. My eldest started secondary school last year, and my youngest is just about to go into the junior part of primary school.
Oh,
they're both fine. You wouldn't have a clue.
No, that's lovely. Thank you, Jo. That was really useful. Thank you.